All right, it is April 10th at 5:34 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. To begin, we're going to do roll call. This is Erin. I'm present.
This is Brian. I'm present.
Rainy.
Oh, did you not hear me? This is Rainey. I'm present.
Okay, no, we didn't hear you, but now we do. Okay, we have a quorum. Moving on to item 3.1, we have a recommendation to approve the agenda for this April 10th, 2025 regular meeting. I will note, Lori, that I think on the website it says April 4th. I got a little confused that I thought I missed a meeting, which wouldn't surprise me. So just FYI. Give everybody a couple minutes to look at the agenda. If there's any changes, please speak up. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve the agenda for the April 10th, 2025 regular meeting.
This is Rainey. I second.
Roll call vote. This is Erin. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey. I approve.
Passes. Item 3.2, recommendation to approve the minutes from the March 13th, 2025 regular meeting. All items for today's meeting are on the website. Give you a couple minutes to look at those. I'll open the floor for a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 13th, 2025 regular meeting.
Rainey, I didn't hear you.
Oh, goodness gracious. Rainey. I second.
All right, roll call vote. This is Erin. I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
This is Brian. I approve.
Rainey. I approve.
And it passes. Hold on a minute. Moving on to item 4, do we have anybody for public comment? I don't see or hear anybody. I don't see anybody in the chat.
There's no one present with us.
And now we will move on to item 5, stakeholder reports. Item 5.1, Lori.
We had the lottery and moved into the post-lottery process. So at this point, we have 24 students we know who are not returning, plus 20 eighth graders we know are matriculating. We have accepted or offered and had accepted 68 spots, and I've broken them out by grade level in my report. That gives us right now an estimated enrollment of 245 students. That is for a goal enrollment of approximately 230 students for the 80th and 120th day. So at this point in the year, we always have more students who have accepted their spots. And then as life happens, some families change their minds, pick a different school, move, etc. So that's why we accept more students at this point in the year than we intend to have ultimately on our rolls. So any questions about enrollment or the lottery? At last month, I mentioned that we were in the running for a gardening grant from Sprouts, and I found out recently that indeed that has come through. So we will be getting a really cool enhancement to our kids cooking program and gardening program. And I believe they would like to bring in lunch for teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week as well. So really,
now I need to start rounding up more often.
there you go.
How much is the grant?
Some of it is in equipment and some of it is in gift cards for food from Sprouts, and some of it will be for teacher stipends. So it's a mix. Total value is 10,000.
Nice.
Very cool.
I think I mentioned this last month as well, but we are going to have a summer literacy program at Mountain Mahogany. currently targeting about 30 students for that program, offering spots first to our students that we really feel would benefit from foundational literacy and reading skills opportunities, and then we'll open it up to any interested family at that point. It will also be supplemented by our current after-school program through the RGEC. They will be running a full-day summer camp type program. So I expect Mountain Mahogany's campus to be quite busy over the summer as well. Which brings me into facilities, because the summer is often a time when we do facilities improvements. And I don't have any quotes to bring in front of the governing council at this point, but some of you may remember when we did a facility master plan. That'll probably be you, Erin, who would
Yeah, I remember.
That was over 5 years ago now. And at that point, the person we were working with suggested that possibly we renovate our portable buildings instead of trying to replace them. And so I did meet with an architect and a builder earlier this year and, asked for more information about that particular idea. They toured the campus, came back and said, well, here's the problem. The exterior of those portables, and the portables I'm talking about are the ones around the circle that house our elementary classes. The exterior, which is, 40 years old at this point. These are portables from 1985 at a minimum. It's getting kind of banged up over time. So I was hoping that there would be some way to replace the exterior or, stucco it or something like that. They said, nope, it's designed to carry as much weight as that particular exterior is and no more. So replacing the exterior or putting a different kind of covering around it is not going to work. So since having that conversation, I have been reaching out to other charter leaders who have led facilities projects, as well as some folks here in Albuquerque who work with charters that need facilities. And so kind of at the beginning of that process, but I think those buildings, I'm happy to wish them a 40th birthday, but I'm not sure I want to celebrate a 50th birthday with them.
Agreed.
In an ideal situation, any work on those buildings would be wrapped into some sort of project where we acquire the radio station and build on the radio station, because one issue right now is that if we knock down a building to put another building up, we don't have anywhere to house the class that's in that classroom. So we probably need to build a little extra overflow space first, move some classes into there, and work on replacing the buildings that need to be replaced ultimately. So, I mean, exciting, also, daunting. But because of the work our founders did, and David Rubin, who helped us acquire the campus, and, everyone who was a part of that, we did not overbuild at the beginning. So we are not over leveraged when it comes to our facilities. Right now we spend roughly $105,000 a year paying our lease purchase agreement with David Rubin. We have a really good interest rate through that. Just based on our enrollment numbers, we would qualify for quite a bit more money in lease assistance without even having to dip into our HB 33 to pay for facilities. And of course, that funding, HB 33, is available also to pay for facilities. So baby steps at the beginning. I don't have a lot of answers for you guys, more questions and answers, but I just wanted to make you aware of my current thinking regarding like long-term facilities needs.
Lori, that lease purchase with Ruben, is it almost done?
No, it goes to
Mary's really shaking her head.
2043, so it is not almost done.
No,
But
it's not.
we have a very, very reasonable interest rate, and because of that, it keeps getting cheaper each year relative
Right.
to inflation. So, yes.
And is there any new update on discussions with the radio station people, or kind of just is what it is?
Actually, I spoke with someone at a facilities event on Tuesday, and he's already reached out to the general manager of the radio station. So I don't think he's heard anything yet, but we've kind of opened the door to have that conversation with the radio station. I also talked with another business manager who, similar to Mount Mahogany, was kind of hemmed in by a lot of existing homes. They ended up buying some homes and knocking them down
Wow.
in order to create more space for what they needed. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Unrelated to these topics, I'm just curious about how state testing is going.
We are just at the beginning of state testing. I think we've done 3 days of state testing. So, and most of them, I've been here at Spring Budget Workshop. But initial reports have been good. So, we've spaced out our state testing so that most days kids are only taking like one section of one subject.
All right. Thank you, Lori. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to 5.2 in the teacher's report. Leora, I'm assuming that's you.
Leora's here. She said she's not feeling well.
Oh, no.
Leora, do you want me to talk for you? Okay.
Oh, allergies, I hope, and not cold or germs.
I actually had some work done. I have very interesting situation going on with my ear and my jaw. And I don't know if you know what the incus bone is, but it's one of the very 3 small bones that are behind your eardrum. And it appears I might have a tiny bone spur that's actually causing me a fair amount of pain from my incus bone in my ear. So anyway, I'm trying not to talk because when I talk, of course, it presses on that ear.
Oh.
I do want to say that I gave Lori the head teacher report, and so she can read it to you, and I can answer questions if you want.
Stop talking already, Leora. So yes, it is posted on the website. So we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to take a look at it. And if you have questions, we can pick Leora or Lori's brains.
Yeah, highlights of Leora's report. We had a lovely family math night on April 3rd. Beautiful evening, lots of families present, really cool math activities in all the classrooms, pizza, potluck. So that was a lot of fun. We have spring sports season is here. So our track team has had, I think, 2 meets already and has 3 more. We are planning a Earth Day event coming up at the end of April. We're going to have Explora on campus doing activities with our students. On a different date, we have a visit from something called the Conservation Carnival, which seems like it's going to be really fun. And we're also having a campus cleanup event that weekend. And let's see.
I see seed bombs. That sounds very fun.
Yeah.
If I could just say something real quick, and that is the thing that we did this year for Family Math Night, where we teamed up instead of having, more of activities. For me, anyway, my experience with our SPED middle school teacher, what was really great was that we found that more parents spent more time with each activity, which I thought was really good. And I think, one of the reasons, of course, we do this is so that families can see some of the concepts that we're trying to teach their children and to just make math a little more accessible and fun. And what I really loved is we had to tell them to leave our classrooms, like get out. It's time to go home. And it was a really beautiful turnout, not just in the numbers, but parents were really interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it.
That's really cool. Lori, did you get any feedback regarding family math night or no?
Not specific feedback as of
Okay, any questions for Lori? Leora's off the hook.
yet.
All right, we're moving to item 5.4, student council report. I'm so bummed that I heard there was a student council report. I was not told that there was a student council report.
Ah,
And one child is at water polo. I don't know what the other one is doing, but I don't see a student council report today that was uploaded.
I did
Did
not
you-
receive one.
Okay. So I think we're good. That means we're moving into the finance committee. And we'll begin with item 6.1, the summary from the previous finance committee on April 7th. And I'm not sure if that's Mary or Elizabeth.
Lori, can you turn on the sharing?
Yes.
I'm just kind of extraneous these days.
That is completely untrue, but she helps answer all the questions that I can't answer for one. Okay, let me make this bigger. So I'm going to start with the requests for reimbursements. And is this big enough? Can you see it? Or should I make it bigger?
Bigger.
And if you go to the bottom, I start with our lunch claims, which Angelina has submitted through March. And so you can see that we are still waiting for, well, we just submitted the March, but we're still waiting for the February as well. This is for the USDA. And then this is for the state portion. And same thing for both of those. We're still waiting for February and the March that we just submitted. And then if I go back up to the top, you can see, and most of this is like, this is where Mary does most of the RFRs. So definitely still very, very needed. So we have submitted for Title I through March 26, as well as Idea B, which is for the SPED. And then we got a little bit of money for this Idea B pre-K. It's also Kinder that we used to cover a little bit of time for our DIAC to do assessments for some kindergartners. And this is actually a final billing because it wasn't that much money, but we're still grateful for it. And then, see. So we had billed Title I through the end of January. Our Ed Fellows is billed through the end of February. This money just actually hit the bank on Friday when I did this for the finance. I hadn't seen it yet, but it did actually come through. And that is a grant that NISA had gotten, and we are working on our library order right now. So and then out of school learning, we had submitted through the end of January, as well as our high dosage tutoring and our community school grant. And we did get reimbursed for, this is for our retherm for the kitchen for heating up the lunches. And we just scheduled the rest of the project. They're going to put in a 3-bin sink, a water heater, a grease trap, and a hand wash sink the first week of June. So that's exciting. And then we just submitted as well for the lease assistance through March. Any questions about the RFRs?
I don't have any.
Alrighty, moving on to the financial statements. No, I will do that later. This is our statement of financial position. And if I go to the third page, you can see that in total, we have $1,286,224. And going back to the first page, out of that, $691,690 are in operational. And note this is for through February. And then if you see negatives here, these are areas that a lot of them we have requested reimbursement. We're just waiting for the funds to come back through. And some of them actually came through in March and will be reflected in the March financials. Are there any questions on the statement of financial position? Okay. Next up is statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And this shows a summary of year-to-date actual expenditures by revenue source up here and expenditure functions down below. And it's similar to what you see in the audited financials, and it gives you a good summary of what type of revenue we're receiving and how we're expending it. And there are 3 pages for this too as well. And are there any questions on the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance? All right. Next up is my favorite, and let me make this bigger so you can actually read it. And that's the disbursements. Got a bunny in my yard, very distracting. Let me know if you have any questions about any, oops, I'm sorry, did not mean to do that. Where did I go? There we are. Any questions on any of the disbursements? All right, last but not least is the budget to actual statements. And the primary thing we look at in this report is negative functions, because that's one of the things that the auditors look for. And in this end of February report, we have 5. All of them are fixed by bars that you approved either in the February or the March GC meeting. And of course, the February ones should be reflected in the March financials. And the March one may not get reflected until the April. But we have already submitted bars to fix all of those, and you guys have approved them, so. And I put notes in the report about which bars fix which negative functions. And this is really long. And I apologize for going through really fast because it's really long. And I want Lori and Brian to be able to go to the party. Any questions on this, the budget to actual?
Elizabeth, I enjoy our time together just as much as a party.
Thank you. And it was really fun seeing Brian at the spring budget too. So
I agree.
So with that, then I respectfully request that you approve the financial statements and cash disbursements for the month ending February 28th, 2025.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, I will entertain a motion I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve financial statements and cash disbursements for the month ending February 28th, 2025.
We have a second? Can't hear you, Rainey.
This is Rainey, I second. There we go.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. All right, we're moving into our bar action.
Yes.
6.3. We have a recommendation to approve bar FY 25-33.
All right, so this one is because we got a donation for and it was a check from FOM for some fundraising that the student council had done. And so it's an increased bar to budget that additional funds. Any questions on this bar FY 25-33?
If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve bar FY 25-33.
Rainey, I second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. Item 6.4, we have a recommendation to approve bar FY 25-34.
And this bar is to continue the process that Mary has been doing to try to maximize our use of the grant funds that we've gotten. And we had a little bit of money left in Title I. And so she's moving some more of our community school coordinator salary there. And that's what this bar is doing. Any questions on bar FY 25-34?
If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve bar FY 25-34.
Rainey, I second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. Item 6.5, we have a recommendation to approve bar FY 25-35.
So these next two bars are basically they're for the food program. This first one is for USDA federal funds, and the second one will be for the state universal meals portion. And basically we have, and these are really small, but this basically is looking at the revenue we have received so far and what we expect to receive for the rest of the year. And so it's an increase bar requesting them to increase our budget authority through what we expect to receive through the rest of the year. Any questions on this bar?
If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve bar FY 25-35.
This is Rainey, I second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. Moving to item 6.6, we have a recommendation to approve bar FY 25-36.
And as I mentioned, this is basically for the universal meals portion. And here is the documentation showing how we came up with the number that we're requesting for the increase bar. Any questions?
If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Quick question. On the website, I see the support. Should I also see a bar?
Did I not upload it? Yes. I thought I uploaded them all. Oh, poo. I'll get on it. It is in the finance portion of the website. Sorry about that, Brian.
It's okay.
Thank you for letting me know, though. Mm.
But just to make sure it's the right amount, is it the 5614.99?
It's rounded in the bar to 56.15.
Perfect. Yep, I just looked at the screen. I was looking at the
Support.
support. Thank you.
document.
Yep.
With that in mind, this is Brian. I make a motion to approve bar FY 25-36.
This is Rainey, I second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. Item 6.7, we have a recommendation to increase the purchase order and give the director permission to sign an increased contract with ACES from $30,000 to $41,000 for business manager services.
And this is because we love Mary. We never want her to retire fully.
Absolutely.
It's because we've spent 26,000 of the 30,000, and we still have March, April, May, and June to pay for. And I anticipate that we'll need 11,000 to get us through the rest of the year, more. And you guys had originally approved 30,000 at the beginning of the year.
And there's no supporting documents on the website, right?
No.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Because 30 was the original amount, are we just leaning on Mary more than anticipated?
I think we may have underestimated when we did it.
Okay.
It's less than we spent last year, but not as much as we thought it would be.
That's why it's a budget, ladies. If there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion.
This is Brian. I make a motion to increase the purchase order and give director permission to sign an increased contract with ACES from $30,000 to $41,000 for business manager services.
And this is Rainey, I second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey, I approve.
Motion passes. We're moving on to item 6.8. We have a budget presentation for the 2025-2026. I cannot believe it, school year.
Okay.
Ooh.
Many of you are familiar with the budget process. A couple of you are less familiar, being newer on the board. We went over this at the finance committee, so Rainey's heard it. So I will try to go quickly and mostly just discuss at the end the changes to the funding formula and other like impacts of the legislative session. So Elizabeth, next slide. So you guys already know that the budget is mostly made up of the state equalization guarantee along with grants, and that the SEG is distributed through what's known as the funding formula. So it's taking into account things like special education status, gifted education status, at-risk status, a whole bunch of other factors. The state adjusts it pretty frequently also to take into account, like, we want to fund PE or we want to fund art, right? So if they really, really want a thing, they will often put units for it in the funding formula. Next one.
Can I just back up real
Yeah.
quick? Why is Mount Mahogany not receiving Title I funding?
APS
Was
decided not to give us Title I funding, and because
just Mount Mahogany, or I guess a group of people?
so APS decided to change the threshold of poverty for funding from 50% to 60%. Mountain Mahogany's calculated percentage was 57%.
Oh,
So it's not just charter schools.
no, but it's
There's
a
also
formula for their threshold.
Yeah, there's also some APS schools who traditionally or in the past have gotten title funding who aren't going to.
Wow.
So now that you've brought this up, the reason that Mountain Mahogany doesn't get its own title funding, it's not just Title I, it's also Title II, which is teacher professional development, and it's also IDEA B, which is special education funding from the government, is because we actually are considered like a school within that school district or within that LEA. So
Right.
at the LEA level, all the money goes to the district, and then the district has the leeway to decide how to distribute it to the schools, including it's not like every dollar that comes in, let's say for Title I at APS, is sent directly out to schools. APS can also say in their Title I application to the state, which is then goes to the federal government, well, you know what, we want to spend 30% of our Title I budget on these school-wide programs. For example, the Explore Family Science Night programs are funded through Title I funding, but that's just one example among many. So there was a bill at the legislature this session. It advanced through, I think, 2 committees, but ultimately didn't pass, to make charter schools, including district charter schools, their own board of finance. So the governing council would become a board of finance. If that bill were to pass in the future, and I would be very happy personally if it did, not only would we be able to apply directly to the state for our own federal funding flow-throughs, which I imagine would be probably 40% larger, rough guess, if we were getting it directly than getting it through APS. And of course, we would no longer have the risk of not getting any funding at all.
Right.
We would also be responsible for our own audit. So we would no longer be audited through APS, if that makes sense. Like, we could engage our own auditors, both of which changes would definitely benefit us. So unfortunately, it didn't pass this time around, but it's a pretty esoteric subject for the legislature to take up.
Who
But
sponsored it?
I couldn't tell you, but I can send you that email
That's
or
okay,
information via email later. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Bummer.
Yes, agreed. So that's about 52,000 that
Yeah.
we're trying to absorb into the operational budget for next year. All right, Elizabeth has scooched us all the way along to updates from the legislative session. There's a minimum 4% it's actually an average raise for school employees. Generally, that just means across the board, but it does give some flexibility to schools or districts to, if some class of employees, let's just say you're giving your bus drivers a 10% raise, then maybe you're giving some other class of employees a smaller percentage raise. There are steady increases in health insurance rates, which also increase employer costs. Let's see. The biggest change that happened, I think it's called House Bill 63, is related to the funding formula. So the funding formula has a factor for at risk. And up until this point, district charter schools have had the same at risk factor as their parent district. So Mount Mahogany has just had APS's at risk factor. And the at risk factor was calculated by combining a calculation around mobility, a calculation of percentage of English language learners, and a calculation on family income, which was based on free and reduced lunch. The state's made so many changes to the lunch program, and the federal government has also changed how community eligibility provision is done for lunch programs, that ultimately it was making, I think the sense was it was making calculating truly low income students a little bit harder than it had been in the past. So the legislature revised the funding formula so that charter schools get their own funding formula, not their districts, and to use something called the Family Income Index instead of the at-risk index. The Family Income Index is calculated by, I believe, first they're looking at if you're directly certified for public benefits like Medicaid or SNAP for food stamps. There's a few other programs that they're checking that are like tribally related. And then they're actually data matching students with Department of Tax and Revenue. And they're not saying, this kid's family makes this amount. They're putting students into broad categories, right? So under 85% of the poverty threshold, or between 85% and 135% of the poverty threshold, or 200% above the poverty threshold. And they're using that data to calculate a family income index for each school. If they can't match a student with either of the data sources that I mentioned, they're pulling data based on the census tract of the student's address they used to register for school. And I believe they're using a 3-year average for schools to create this number. So one of the reasons that we don't have our actual estimated revenues from the state yet is they are now busily calculating this number for however many schools there are in New Mexico and plugging it in to their spreadsheets. So for Mountain Mahogany, what that means in short is that we can expect the at-risk index to bring in less revenue, or the family income index to bring in less revenue than the previous at-risk index did. And because it's a multiplier, those numbers can get pretty big pretty fast. Some charter schools, especially charter schools that are elementary only, are looking at big decreases in their budgets for next year in the tune of hundreds of thousands. At the same time that they changed how they're calculating the at-risk, the legislature increased the what is it called? The
Secondary units?
Yeah, the secondary units, that's right. So previously, a sixth grader's factor was a 1.045. Seventh and eighth grade factors were 1.25. All of those have been raised to 1.3 for this upcoming school year. So based on an analysis of the Legislative Educational Study Committee, Mountain Mahogany looked to be, based on last year's numbers, looked to be like roughly 30,000 less when you balance the secondary versus the at-risk. Don't know exactly how that will, wash out for this year's funding, but I expect it to be mostly even, right? So we generate more money because the secondary units have gone up. We generate less money because we use our own at-risk index or family income index number instead of the districts. Any questions about that?
Lori, I did want to, they have recognizing that there were schools and districts that were going to lose funding, the legislature did put a small pool, about $1,000, about $1 million, to help offset those harms for 1 year. The estimated cost of the actual hold harmless was about 4 million. So we're not sure how they're going to allocate that difference. But they did talk about part of the reason that the legislature was was going to do that was because in their analysis, they also ended up taking a look at cash balances and how much people budget for their cash balance. And, you know, as I talk about all the time, trying to keep cash balance down, because every time it gets too high, they take it away. And they basically have said, you know, you all have a lot of cash balance that you should be using to offset this change. So that is out there. I really wish APS would listen to us when we say there's not a good, I mean, you have to be careful how much you put in cash balance, because they just take it away and they keep saying that's not true. But once again, it's rearing its head.
This is always my favorite time of year.
Yeah.
Ours also.
Who's electing people?
You know, so of course, right, we're sitting here, it's April 10th.
Right.
The deadlines for the state wanting our budget are not that far away, 2 weeks away. We have done all of the work we can on the estimating expenditures portion. Now we just have to kind of sit and wait for this is your revenues portion. And then we're going to have to be prepared to move quickly, you know, to prepare a budget for the governing council and that we can submit to the PED. As Erin said, it is a budget. That means it is a plan. It's not the final draft of everything that happens and everything the school is going to do. But this is our timeline. I want to note that in order to have an approved budget by the deadlines, we've requested the governing council be available for a morning meeting on April 21st. So you should have all gotten a calendar invite for April 21st. I believe it was for 7:30 a.m.
Correct.
So we do need to discuss if that is not going to work as far as having a quorum to approve the budget, and it will be virtual.
I mean, for those of us that are here, I could probably be there. I might have to be on a phone taking children if my husband is not here, which means, Brian, you will have to run the meeting.
It is on my calendar.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Erin, if you want, we can just all get to Mountain Mahogany at 7:30 with some coffee and some bagels and your children and have a meeting.
The problem is I have to get Helene at 8:05.
Oh, that's not as good.
She
Darn
moves.
it.
I would
I
totally
could stop by Mount
No,
Mahogany. if that's the
however,
deal.
if my husband's here, I might say, let's switch kid duty and I will reiterate coffee.
Okay.
Lori and Mary, do we have like I don't want to use a timeline or a date, but when the revenue number should come? And I know Mary's laughing.
It's Barry.
Lori's
sorry.
clapping and Mary's laughing. I'm just, what's in the rumor mill?
Basically, we did not. The governor did not pass some of this. The bills for the cost factors. For the high school secondary until yesterday during the meeting. She has to have everything signed by tomorrow. If it were me, I would have had like 3 different 910 B5s up there. One of that, covered all the possible scenarios. Obviously, that's not what happened. But they basically they can't send it out until they know what she has passed and what she hasn't passed,
Right.
So we should know tomorrow because that's her deadline. If it gets pocketed veto, it's going to be like some major problems because she has, as far as I know, she has not signed the major budget bill.
Wow. All right.
So my guess is, I mean, if they're efficient up there, they probably have it ready. So as soon as they can get it out, it will probably be next Wednesday by the earliest. We just got the 120-day numbers today for verification. So, you know, we used to get those a little earlier, but it's not happening.
Aaron, I would say best case, middle or end of next week. Worst case, beginning of the following week.
All right. Well, I guess no better time to jump into those priorities, Lori.
Yes.
I do want to say that we have the budget that we have set up, the expenses covers like Title I not going. We have pulled those expenses into operational in the anticipation that we will be able to. We have had higher special education numbers, and this year, thanks to Lori and the staff, the teacher cost index for the school has always been a 1 factor. You can't go below 1. Our factor this year was calculated at 1.054, which is a 5% increase. And what that said, it's a multiplier. So once you have the cost indexed enrollment units, you multiply that by 5.4%. So that jumped us up quite well this year. First time we've actually seen that benefit. And so that does give us some assistance with the other things that are going down.
All right.
All right. So we already discussed Title I funding. We know that we won't have that for next year. Right now, that's paying for a roughly 0.5 of a reading interventionist. So we are projecting to put that within our operational budget. We also received a CSI grant this year. That's not community schools. That's for a school designation. We know that we've gone back to a traditional designation, so we won't receive that money next year. Most of that was for professional development or consulting or different things that are one-time costs, but our dyslexia therapist is in there, so we do want to make sure that that's funded within operational. We have some other grants, Ed Fellows, which pays for 2 EAs who are pursuing bachelor's degrees, and high dosage tutoring, which pays for math intervention. Right now, the signs are promising for those grants to return next year, but we don't know for sure. We know that our community schools grant is ending. We've been grant funded for, I believe, like 6 years now for community schools. That's generally paid for a community school coordinator. It's helped fund our Awesome Hour program, and it's helped fund our outdoor learning, the treks with Cottonwood Gulch. So we're trying to absorb what we can into operational, but we may need to make cuts for things that were paid for by that grant. We do think that we are going to get more funding in this upcoming year because our special education numbers and gifted education numbers have increased. But also at the same time, that means we need to meet those needs. So that looks like adding to the allocation of teachers in that area. And then, so far we have been successful in our school meal program, not costing us tons of money out of our operational budget. So our food service vending has been basically break even, and we've been paying for an employee who does the service. So, I am talking to charter leaders who are saying, "Oh, I'm $100,000 in the red on my school lunch program," and I'm telling, "Hey, Elizabeth and Angelina, you guys are doing a really good job managing our costs there," because ultimately, a school lunch program or a school meal program that goes into the red is very, very unsustainable for schools. Those costs add up very quickly. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about for the upcoming school year is just, managing our growing needs for special education and gifted education appropriately. And, managing, balancing grant funds that are coming to the end of their life and, what investments, what programs, what services are the very most important and crucial for our school.
The community school coordinator in the budget that was put together, is that maintained as part of operational?
Not at this time. I'm waiting to see if it's possible. And I've already spoken with the community school coordinator to let her know that the grant came to an end.
That's disappointing.
Is there one more slide, Elizabeth? Yes, challenges, uncertainty. It's a key word. I'm sure if you listen to the news, you hear things like the Department of Education is closing, or this is happening, or wait, no, it's not happening anymore. So there's a lot of federal uncertainty. And, the best thing we can do is focus on what we are meant to do with students and how we're serving the students at our school. And then, cope with whatever happens when we come to that point. There was a legislative panel today, and the legislatures basically said the same thing. Like, they are aware that there are risks to important funding streams for New Mexico, like Medicaid or title funding. But also it hasn't happened yet. So we're just gonna, know that that's a possibility. Mary already discussed that charters were supposed to be held harmless in the first year of this change to the funding formula, but not enough funding was allocated to completely hold schools harmless, maybe only like 25% harmless. That's not very harmless. So we'll see how that rolls out. Absorbing the impact of grants ending, finding other ways to provide services or meet needs, and increasing numbers of students with IEPs and gifted. I think we will have, a lot of students qualifying for gifted as we go forward. So that's increased cost for staffing. And that is it for the budget presentation.
Are there any other questions?
Do we know at this point, just in terms of positions for next year, is it too soon for that?
Right now, I am maybe looking to increase teachers by 1 special education FTE, and I'm counting gifted within the special education. So quite a few people who are special ed certified are interested in being gifted certified or are dual certified. So other than that, I'm looking at teaching and classroom positions with no changes.
I'm really saddened about the community school position because I'm a major proponent of the community school strategy because of the effect it has on student outcomes.
And that grant was a 3-year grant, right, Lori?
We had a planning grant, and then we had a 3-year implementation grant, and then we got an extra year of implementation, and then we got an extra year. So I believe we have ridden that particular.
Yeah. But
as long as
is there like, I want to say political incumbents can only run so many times. Can you like reapply and start the process all over again? Or once you've been in that grant, you can't do it again?
Yeah, no, you can't do it again.
Really?
Yeah.
Any support from the APS district office? Are they aware of this potential change?
I don't think they are. I have talked a little bit to the ABC Community School Coalition.
Okay.
So one thing I will say is that like Mountain Mahogany was a community school before we got this grant, and we will be a community school whether or not we have this funding, right? I think it's so deep in our DNA, there's no way that we're not going to be working in that particular way and trying to use those strategies to drive student improvement.
Having the person, though, is incredibly important.
Having the person, no doubt having the person is important, for sure.
Like I said, it's my favorite time of year. Well, any other questions?
What should we expect to see on the 21st that's different from today?
Oh, Mary, why don't you answer that question?
So we will be presenting, hopefully on the 21st, you will see a presentation that we normally do, which is a high level. This is our revenue. This is our expenses by function. And then a summary of that. You will be seeing salary schedules. You will be seeing a calendar because the calendar has to go in, and it's very similar to what you've already done, but the calendar you all approve are kind of for scheduling, and this is for PED revenue generation. And then you will also have, let's see, calendar, salary schedules. Then you'll have your form that you will have to sign that we have to turn into APS, which they then in turn sends up to PED. Did that help?
It did. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? That is it. Moving on to 6.9. The next finance committee is scheduled for May 5th, 2025. Though we have all those budget meeting dates that were presented in the budget presentation. So please make sure that you acknowledge the 21st at 7:30 in the morning. Policy committee, we tried. We failed twice. We'll try again. We will try again. Item 8, Academic Excellence Committee. We have a summary for 8.1 from the last meeting that was on April 2nd. Brian, do you want to fill us in?
Yes, very briefly. The focus of the meeting was we were looking at data from the math screener that was implemented this year and looking at the relationship between anonymous student level results and the results of other assessments that students take. So that was very interesting to look at. Just a new data point, and I think an important data point for the school to be looking at.
What did you see in that data?
What I found, and Lori, feel free to jump in. What I found interesting just the first time, I mean, I was unfamiliar with the screener, but looking at the data, Lori did a good job talking about what exactly is measured and just noticing that relationship between the screener results and other assessments. And
Meaning the relationship that coincided, they were showing the same.
yeah, in terms of performance, but then what I was
Uh-huh.
going to mention also is that, I mean, it's not a one-to-one relationship, and it's just a reminder of, the difference between looking at student level data and school-wide data. And for those students where maybe one data point is telling one particular story and another data point is telling another story, just really digging in because the context is important. And of course, just a reminder that any student's more than a single data point. So just really interesting. And for next month, for the May meeting, what we're going to begin to jump into is, now that we have our adopted strategic plan, just brainstorming what monitoring of the strategic plan will look like and whether the extent to which the school is making progress toward the goals that we adopted.
Nice. Anything to add, Lori?
Yeah, just that the number sense screener that Brian was discussing it has two parts. One, a student does like in a face-to-face interview with a teacher, and the other is pencil and paper that they do. And I think for some kids that does give you a much better assessment of what they know and where their strengths and weaknesses are than an online assessment. Some of our kids are just click away, and try and get it done as fast as they can, or that format really just makes it a little bit harder to get a true assessment of whether or not they need intervention. And intervention is, a resource intensive activity for a school. So you really don't want to be putting a student into an intervention plan if they don't really need it.
Is
Leora,
this the screener that you're using to support the strategic plan and the school's goal around math academics?
It's not written into the strategic plan. It's, besides everything that we do, right, should be funneling towards that goal of improved mathematics achievement. I think the real reason we sought it out and decided to use it is because we felt like the tools that were required by the state, such as iStation in K-1-2, just really weren't sufficient for helping us understand where students were struggling and which students needed the most help, and maybe why they weren't as successful as we hoped that they would be. So I think it's just a lens, right? That collectively our faculty and staff is using to examine student data to be more, I don't know, insightful, right? Because a state assessment is also going to engage like geometry, right? And if you look at like a test students take, they might get those geometry questions wrong. And is that really the barrier for them to be successful with like the next step of math? Or is it more that they don't understand place value, right? If there's some foundational understanding that's missing at these early grades, K-1-2, it really, really prevents successful engagement with math as they go through higher grades, more grade level content.
And are you taking the assessment once a year or twice a year, or?
The assessment is designed so it can be taken beginning, middle, and end of year.
Okay. And this was
So
the first time you guys took it,
this
or
was
no?
the first time we did it. Yeah.
And
So
then,
go back to the faculty and staff and see if they want to invest in taking it end of year, or if maybe we just want to pick it up at the beginning of year. I think a beginning of year would be really, really important because that's when you're building your intervention groups and trying to decide what students need support and how. And a lot of times all the data you have, especially if the student is new to your school, is an iStation score or an iReady score. And that's really not then the best indicator.
Mhm.
It hasn't been an indicator that I've been happy enough with to feel like, oh, I'm satisfied. I understand, who needs help and why. So.
Very cool. I'm excited. I hope it feeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed. For sure.
Okay, so anything else with the Academic Excellence Committee? Any questions?
The only thing that I'll add is I just, looking at the agenda, reminded myself that the quote unquote May meeting, we bumped that up to April 30th.
Okay. So the next Academic Excellence Committee is April 30th.
Yes.
Moving on to number 9 then, Council Development Committee. 9.1, review status of board member training hours. I think I looked today and I believe the 3 of us are compliant.
Good job.
Just for the record, since we are at the spring budget workshop, there was a session on New Mexico Vistas, the accountability system. And there was a brief mention of the publication of the extent to which boards, charter boards, and school district boards are meeting the training requirements. Training is a good thing. We need that anyway, but just another reminder to get it done on a regular basis because it is public information.
Yeah. All right. 9.2, recruitment of board members, candidates for governing council. We're going to need them since people are retiring and leaving.
I'm working on
I
one
know Brian
possibility.
told me. Brian's got one.
A possibility.
Possibility.
I got at least one parent possibility from our flyer. So Erin
Nice.
and Brian, can I send that person on to you to meet with?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Parent of what age?
6th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, get all these newbies, rope them in.
Yeah.
They're excited.
Yes, and actually there is a promising kinder prospect as well.
Ooh.
So Nothing like a kinder. Well, as Elizabeth knows, one of them showed up to the finance committee meeting, and if that isn't a sign that you're willing to be on the
Wow.
governing council, I
Did you
don't know
did
what
you
is.
did you rope them in, Elizabeth?
I didn't want to terrify him like via Zoom, Aaron.
And the other thing too is that we started with the budget presentation so the parents came, they could bail afterwards. He stayed for the whole meeting,
Ooh,
right?
Either very interested or very polite.
either. I like both of them.
But yes, always put people in touch. I
Okay.
mean, I love serving
Yes.
the board, and I would love to talk to anybody who's interested. That's good news.
All right, item 10, Director Support Committee. That's the other thing that we said we were going to do, Brian.
Yes, Aaron, do you want to meet?
Yeah, Lori, I thought we were going to go get meet
Brian
at
got sick and we couldn't go get wine, but
no,
I
Brian, you got sick.
Oh, that's right. It was my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
but that was a while ago.
let's start a text string to choose the date.
Okay.
Okay. Make sure Lori's on it because we need her there. All right, number 11, the Audit Committee. My favorite committee. Nothing to report.
No.
I have heard, we will probably have new auditors this year. If I recall right, Moss Adams can no longer do the audit.
Oh man. Though I also cringe kind of like the budget on my, but what are they gonna ask for? What are their, I call them
Yeah,
rules and
Mary's
regulations.
just gotten
They're
done
rules and
training the
regulations.
existing auditors.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's any training of that particular group.
No. No. Well, there you have it. It is 6:41 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
This is Brian. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. This is Aaron. I approve.
This is Brian. I approve.
This is Rainey. I approve.
And we're adjourned.
Thanks,
I'll
guys.
meet you at the bar in a couple of minutes then.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.